You mean to tell me there's a game out here that revolves around a beautiful, strong woman as a main protagonist? Sign me up. What's going on, y'all YouTube? It's your boy D Weezy and welcome back to another video. Now, today's video, I want to talk about a game that I recently played and finished a few days ago, and I really liked the game, and I just wanted to share my experience playing it. So, without any further ado, let's have a random talk. Now, the game that I'm talking about today is called Bayonetta, and it's a game that originally came out in 2009 on console, but the version I played was the remastered edition that came out in 2020. Now, at the time of me getting this game, I already had a lot of games pretty much lined up before me playing Bayonetta, so I had it just sitting in the library chilling for a long time now, and I recently got the opportunity to finally play it, and let me tell y'all this right now, this game definitely didn't disappoint. So I did figure it out after playing it that this is a hack and slash game. I know there's a lot of good hype about hack and slash games from the community, from people that play those kind of games. And I will tell you right now, if you never heard about it and you're into hack and slash games, I would really recommend this game to you. I originally bought this game on sale at the time for $20, but as of right now, when I recently checked, the actual retail price is $25. So, in a world full of games that are now priced at $70 in terms of standard edition, for this game to be $25 for all the things that I'm about to tell you that's happening inside the game, I do think this is a really budget friendly game that anybody can play pretty much. My main thing that I like about this game is the combat, or you could say the gameplay. There are so many things to desire in this game when it comes to the combat. There's a lot of variety when in terms of finishing moves and ways you can avoid enemy attacks and the ways that you can go off about you in terms of fighting, even though for the most part you are going to be fighting groups of people, where it could be a duo or it can be just a large amounts of the same kind of villains, pretty much. While you also do have the obvious like boss battles and stuff where the bosses are humongous, for the most part you're going to be fighting like the lower tier kind of villains and enemies. But the way you go about them is just a fact that you have so much that you can actually do. They have things called a torture chamber, where there's different ways you can torture certain enemies. That they have a thing called a torture chamber, so that there's different ways you can torture enemies. It is a form of a finishing move, and I love how interactive that is. They also have a thing called climax, to when she kind of shows off if she has her like witch powers and evolves around her hair, and you can use that to help him finish off enemies as well. And it's not just the exact same climax and torture chambers. There are like so many different varieties of it in terms of finishing moves that really keeps you engaged the entire time. Now, thankfully, it's not one of those games to when it seems like you're just checking off the same checklist over and over again. It ain't one of those games to when you know exactly what you got to do, or you know exactly how you got to go about things. The fact that they went with a variety route and actually do a good job of putting out variety stuff with good quality instead of just putting out a bunch of whatever and saying, oh, we got variety, just because it's just a lot to see. The fact that they actually did a really good job of that variety route, I think that is a main highlight in terms of me, myself, and I. In terms of the story, I do think the story was pretty decent at best. I didn't have high expectations of the story because it's one of those kind of games that just mainly focus on combat and gameplay. So I didn't think the story, for the most part, would be amazing. But the story was decent enough for you to just keep thinking about what ifs and stuff like that. The story summarizes pretty much revolves around Bayonetta trying to patch up what happened to her 500 years ago. In the most times that the story plays out as you get higher and higher into the game. In terms of you progress and do the story, the better the story gets. So it's one of those stories that's good enough for you to just not care about it. It's one of those stories where it's just good enough for you to at least care about it. And it also revolves around this journalist named Luca who's taking on the reins from his father, who was a journalist himself. And he had this strong belief that Bayonetta killed his father in the midst of his big research project. And when it comes to the climax of the story and when he actually finds out the truth, I do believe that that's when his side of things actually was the best, in my opinion. And also, I think the story actually peaked once we introduced to this little girl named Cereza, and she kept calling Bayonetta mommy, and she had this whole instinct that Bayonetta was actually her mom. And Bayonetta was simply confused, trying to believe that why would this little girl call me her mom? I don't have any kids. I don't really like kids like that. And then it can leave figuring out that if this actually her mom or not. But honestly, when I first seen this happening, I was just kind of instantly believed that this has to be a way of Bayonetta seeing herself when she was a little kid. So I was just thinking like that pretty much the whole time. But once the story progresses as you go through the game, the story does get a little bit better and better at the time. So I think the story was decent at best. In terms of the enemies and the bosses, this game definitely has a lot of them. It is definitely have good amounts of them as well. It's just different forms of enemies, different forms of monsters, and they keeping the medieval look on them as the ancient look on them as well. And I do believe that in terms of the design, in terms of the voice acting of them, in terms of the way they going about the fights, it honestly they did a really good job with this as well. And it's not a situation to when the boss fights are similar. All the bosses have their own ways of attacking, they have their own ways of going about how they do things, and they have their own set of moves that you have to figure out in order for you to defeat them. And the main villain that I really liked at the time was John. And it's the person that you were fighting alongside in the beginning of the game. But it turns out that she was on a mission to help you realize your full potential pretty much. And you have to fight her 3 times. And I will say, the third time that you fight her, in my opinion, it was my favorite fight in terms of the villain you're facing because it seems like you're fighting yourself. Like if you put yourself in Bayonetta's shoes, it seems like you're fighting against yourself because the way she was moving, the way she's fighting, attacking, it was crazy because she had this whole styling, profiling, this whole way of, oh, I'm gonna beat you up and look good doing it kind of way, the same way that Bayonetta does things herself. So I really like that aspect in terms of John. And also the final boss fight with Jubileus, what they did with the final boss was really good. It did feel like in game for me, which for those of you who don't know, in my opinion, I do believe that all boss fights, in terms of final boss fights, should have you feel like in game. And I do think that this game does a pretty good job of it as well. And the reason why I thought about this because it just seems like to me, every time I go up against a major boss or final boss, I always have limited inventory, which makes things a little bit better when it comes to experience and the immersion of it. Because the fact that you don't have that much at your disposal and you're still able to come out on top, it just makes things twice as better, in my opinion. That's what really can make a game feel really good to you to a point where you actually cherish it. And I do believe this game does that. Now, when it comes to the setting, I mean, you're fighting in so many different areas. You're traveling across the map in terms of you cutscene to cutscene after you finish through each chapter. You're constantly going through different areas and you're fighting in different places. And it also has a sprinkle of puzzles and that you have to figure out on your own as the game progresses. It's a good way of not having the game feel stale. And I think that's one of the worst things you can have in a video game is when the game feels stale. to the point to where you just feel like you're doing the same stuff over and over again. Or as I say in the beginning of the video, it seemed like you're just checking off the same checklist over and over again. When it comes to that, definitely doesn't do that. You can go from fighting on the ancient island to you fighting in the highway, and then the next point you're fighting in the ocean, and next thing you know you're fighting on top of a torpedo, and you can be fighting on random buildings, you can fight on rooftops, hotels. You're fighting in so many different places, so many different venues that you can fight at that really keep a gamer engaged, because if they're seeing the same stuff over and over and over again, eventually most gamers gonna get bored of that. And you don't want gamers to get bored of it, because this can lead to people just straight up not caring about it as much, because they feel like they've seen the same stuff so many times already, because they have literally have. And also, this isn't a game that you can just pull up and fight people the whole time. You can ride on motorbikes, you can climb on the enemies, and in terms of rescue missions, you can once again you can put yourself in a situation where you're the actual torpedo and you're firing off on villains and other torpedoes coming your way. So the fact that the game has that much to offer on top of the things that they're trying to have to be the main focus, I do think that was a pretty good idea. Now, when it comes to the soundtrack, they do have some points to where, depending on the stage of the fight or the stage of whatever you add in terms of setting, they do have it to where it does feel like it's a really important matter going on. They do a lot of choirs in terms of singing and a lot of high pitched voices, and it has a bunch of loud instruments playing to really have you, in terms of like a mind control thing, to have you really think that, oh, this matter must be pretty important, because the choir was very high, it's high pitched voices and instruments playing loud, and have you really feel like it's just this really important matter that you're currently in right now, and it feels like the stakes are pretty high. So the soundtrack was actually nice. I will say that. When we get into all the positive out the way, I do have probably like a couple, maybe a few things that I really didn't like about it. The main thing I didn't really like about the game, I will say, is the camera. Since the camera, it was automatically fixed at inverted at some points. Like if I go up and the camera goes up, if I point down, the camera goes down. But if I turn left, the camera turns right. If I go right, the camera turns left. So when it comes to the x-axis, it's automatically inverted, and it can be throwing you off a lot of times, like it did to me. Because a couple of examples, like when I'm fighting against John and she's wall running, and I'm hopping on to the wall that she jumped on, the camera won't even go and focus on the person that I'm fighting. Or it could be John, it could be whoever the enemy is. It will go into me pointing at a building. It could be pointing at the sky. It could be going at the ground level. Also, when I'm doing this one mission that involves me being on a torpedo with Luca and Cereza, it will have you in terms like the movement, since it's inverted. If you're trying to go left, since you're so used to them going left, they will go right, and then it'll just kind of throw you off a little bit. So I don't know, it could be me. I tried fixing the settings. It will either be the same or it'll be worse. So I don't know if it's just me or not, but that's just one of the things that they really like about the game. Another thing I did really like about it is, although there is a variety of moves you get by from the Gates of Hell shot that Robon has and runs, it just it only works on like the lower tier enemies. But once you get to the higher tier enemies, most of those moves are pretty much ineffective, because even though you can do those moves and perform them on them, yeah, you can do that. But once you get hit, you automatically get taken out the animation. So it's pretty much that if you ain't using it on the low tier enemies, it's pretty much pointless to use them, because they always dodging. Plus, obviously, the better the villains, the stronger they are, this, then the third. So those moves, even though I do appreciate them being here and they do have a purpose, and I don't mind them being in the game, you just can't use them on like all enemies. You just have to be real selective with it. I don't have a major problem with it, but it's just something I did want to point out. Another thing that I will say I didn't really, not say not appreciate it, I just had a really tough time with it. But this is like a minor issue because this is an optional thing. And that's this place called Alfame. Yes, I did look up how to pronounce it. Alfame is pretty much a test your mic kind of thing, where it's these challenges that you have to meet certain requirements to do before time runs out. Now, the first one, it was pretty much, hey, just beat all the enemies before the clock runs out. I was like, all right, cool. Second time I did Alfame challenge, it was the one where you had to defeat it before the clock runs out, but you have to be in an out of body state in order for you to attack enemies, which I didn't mind at first. But before you actually like fight the people, you have to be in this animated to when you're circling yourself and your actual human body is in this sphere in order for you to actually, and then your and then but here's the catch though. Since your like out of body self is connected to your actual human flesh self, if someone hits that sphere, it counts as you taking damage for your health. And they only had like 5 green spheres. So you get hit 5 times and you failed. You can also obviously take damage when you're in the out of body state. And since it's linked into the human flesh state that's in the sphere, you can be attacking someone and then it will just randomly have the camera turn into an enemy attacking the sphere and you're taking damage. So although I did complete it, it did took me over an hour and it's just one of those things that you just really have to take a long time for you to strategize, try to figure out the best way to do it because they only give you a few minutes to do them and it's like multiple waves as well. So even though I did get it done, it was a challenging, so I can at least respect that. The third one though, after that, I tried the third one. I just say, you know what, this alpha and stuff, y'all got it because when it comes to that third one, the goal was to beat all the enemies as fast as you can before the clock runs out, but you had to only attack them using Wicked Weave's attacks. Now, Wicked Weave was a special attacks to when you build up this magic meter by dodging enemy attacks at the last second, and then time will temporarily freeze. But since you can only attack them with those attacks, the best way to think about it and go about it, in my opinion, was to fill up that meter, probably max it out, and then just spam the Wicked Weaves attacks. But the thing was, it took me so long because they give you less than 4 minutes to do it. And then as I kept failing, and then I eventually get past the second wave, I realized there was a third wave added to it. So it's 3 waves, and you got less than 4 minutes to complete it. And they start you off at zero. They start you off with having your magic meter empty. I just think they should have gave people more time. If it was 6 minutes, I think that would have been cool. Maybe five and a half, 5.5, 6 minutes would have been cool. But less than 4 minutes, I just think that's just a little rough, especially when you start people off at zero. So overall, I would like to say for a game that's once again is $25 for retail price in a world that nowadays games are $70 in terms of standard editions, not counting deluxe and ultimate all that stuff. This is a really good budget friendly game, and I do have to put the quotation on there because some people might feel different ways, but in terms of comparison of the prices, I do think it's a really good budget friendly game that I will recommend to you guys and girls. Um, if you're really into the hack and slash kind of games, you're really into the games where you can just pull up and beat on people as much as you can, as much as you like, and as you please, with a decent story and also really engaging atmospheres and also can really have you immersed the entire time, this game is definitely for you. And also, I beat this game in 18 hours, which leads to know that the game is not very long. It's just really a straight to the point kind of game, which is something that I really love. It does have a prologue. It has 17 chapters and then an epilogue. But the chapters, for the most part, are pretty short. I realized it was probably a handful of chapters to when all it revolves around you doing is beating up a major boss and the chapter ends. So there's, for the most part, I have short chapters, and the longest part about the game is pretty much the epilogue. I think the epilogue is like the longest part of the game, and that's just the end of it. So I do want to just put that out here just because I just don't want to forget saying it to y'all. So yeah, more of the story. I really like the game Bayonetta. I think it's a really good game. The way that I go about games pretty much is that if I see and read the objective of what the game is trying to provide, and I base it off of how good or bad of a job that they did in terms of their objective. Like, did they go about it in a good way? Did they go about it in a bad way? That's pretty much how I do it. I know it's just me. I ain't saying it that everyone should think that way. I'm just talking about myself pretty much, like I always do. I think everyone should do, but yeah. So, if you play this game, let me know your thoughts about it. Did you like it? Did you hate it? If you do like it, tell me why. If you don't like it, tell me why. And if you want to do all the stuff that all the YouTubers say at the end of their videos, you can do that if you want to, or not. Because as I always say, you're grown. You can do whatever you want. With that being said, I will see y'all in the next video. Peace out, y'all.